Welcome to The Debate. Today, we are examining the global energy boom, and specifically that explosive shift toward functional beverages in the international fast-moving consumer goods market, what we all just call the FMCG space. We are jumping right into the high-stakes world of international beverage distribution to answer one central question. What is the primary driver of Monster Energy's status as a top-performing, globally dominant B2B SKU?
Right. And to do that, we are grounding our discussion in some recent market and nutritional analysis. We're looking really closely at the brand's formulation, the detailed ingredient profile, and those precisely calibrated caffeine serving sizes.
Exactly. Now, I will be arguing that Monster's market dominance and global export success are fundamentally driven by its highly calibrated, standard 160 milligram caffeine serving size. It serves as the perfect consumer sweet spot and, crucially, a predictable anchor for international regulators.
And I will be arguing that the precise caffeine count is, it's really just secondary. The true driver of consumer loyalty and market dominance is the proprietary synergistic Monster blend alongside the sheer strategic complexity of its product variations.
To begin, we really have to look at the foundational architecture of the product itself. The significance of the 160 milligram breakdown in a standard 16 fluid ounce can, or 473 milliliters for our international buyers, is just incredibly significant.
Right, because if you do the basic math on that, it translates to exactly 10 milligrams of caffeine per fluid ounce.
Exactly, which physiologically, that is roughly equivalent to 2 small cups of freshly brewed coffee. But here is the mind-blowing part for anyone handling FMCG distribution. 160 milligrams represents exactly 40% of the FDA's recommended 400 milligram daily safe limit for healthy adults. People often think of this brand as this extreme, rebellious product, but from a B2B distribution standpoint, it's actually the exact opposite. It is an incredibly safe, conservative, mathematically perfect product.
So you're saying it's designed for compliance just as much as it's designed for consumption?
100%. Look, in the complex world of international distribution, predictability is paramount. This specific formulation represents what I consider to be the ultimate sweet spot for functional beverages. It provides predictable, moderate consumption levels that importers can absolutely rely on. When you are moving millions of units across borders, you are constantly navigating global customs, stringent labeling laws, widely varying consumer safety standards. A standardized FDA-compliant metric like that 160 milligram baseline provides a regulatory safe harbor.
A safe harbor, right?
Yeah, because it is strong enough to deliver the promised functional benefit to the consumer, but precisely calibrated to avoid the regulatory scrutiny that constantly plagues those ultra-high caffeine outliers. This numerical consistency is the absolute bedrock of its global scalability.
I acknowledge the 160 milligram baseline is certainly the number printed on the can and filed with customs authorities. It makes the paperwork clean. However, if we are looking at what actually moves this product off retail shelves, what generates the kind of visceral consumer loyalty that makes it a mandatory SKU for distributors, we have to immediately pivot to the complexity of the formulation.
So you're talking about the chemistry behind the label.
Exactly. The brand's true power lies in the synergistic energy blend. We are not just talking about isolated caffeine dropped into carbonated water here. We are talking about a highly engineered chemical profile. Let's unpack that a bit. You have taurine, which is an amino acid supporting cardiovascular function and muscle performance. You have L-carnitine, which actively assists the body in converting fat into energy at the cellular level. Add to that Panax ginseng, which acts as an adaptogen. Basically, it helps the body manage stress and stay focused rather than just giving you the jitters.
And you can't forget the metabolic support in there, too.
Right, the comprehensive suite of B vitamins like niacin, B6, B12, riboflavin. But crucially, you also have the 54 grams of sugar in the original grain can. Furthermore, there is a critical limitation in your thesis regarding that precise 160 milligram metric.
Really? How so?
The nutritional analysis highlights the presence of unlisted natural caffeine from guarana extract. Guarana is essentially a stealth ingredient. It can add anywhere from 10 to 30 milligrams of extra unlisted caffeine per can, simply because it's categorized as a natural botanical. Understanding this complete, holistic chemical profile, rather than fixating on a single printed metric, is what truly separates successful retail buyers and global B2B traders from those who fundamentally misunderstand the functional beverage category.
I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective on how consumers and, by extension, wholesale buyers actually evaluate this category. Let's use some comparative data to defend the genius of that 160 milligram standard. Think about standard sodas for a second. If you look at a classic 12-ounce Coca-Cola, you're looking at what, about 34 milligrams of caffeine?
Right, and even if you step up to Diet Coke, you're only hitting roughly 46 milligrams.
Exactly, and then look at the pioneer of the space, Red Bull. An 8-ounce can is sitting right at 80 milligrams. So that's the lower end of the spectrum. But then look at the other extreme. If you grab a 16-ounce premium drip coffee, like a Starbucks Pike Place roast, you're getting blasted with over 300 milligrams of caffeine.
Which is a massive dose for a single sitting, yeah.
It is. That is a level that frequently pushes consumers straight into the territory of jitters, anxiety, rapid heart rates. The 160 milligram formulation of Monster safely avoids those extreme highs. It is the ultimate middle ground. It's an intentional, highly engineered compromise that satisfies the consumer's demand for a tangible energy lift without crossing the threshold into negative physiological side effects. For wholesalers and B2B traders, this is exactly what you want. A universally appealing, high-turnover SKU that can be consumed daily, sometimes multiple times a day, without overwhelming the average consumer's system.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that. Let me tell you why. The true kick that consumers are paying for, the very reason this product has such unprecedented turnover velocity in retail coolers around the world, isn't just because it sits neatly in a safe 160 milligram middle ground. It is the biological mechanism triggered by the combination of these specific ingredients. Let's go back to those 54 grams of sugar for a moment.
It is a significant amount of sugar, definitely.
It's massive. The American Heart Association recommends a daily limit of 36 grams for men and 25 grams for women. A single can delivers roughly 1.5 to 2 times the recommended daily allowance. When a consumer drinks this, they are receiving an instant, massive glucose spike that hits the bloodstream within 30 to 60 minutes.
Right, providing the immediate fuel.
Yes, but it's what happens next that creates the magic. Simultaneously, the caffeine is binding to and blocking the adenosine receptors in the brain. To put it simply, adenosine is the chemical that builds up in your brain to tell you you're tired. Caffeine essentially acts like a bouncer at a club, keeping those fatigue signals from getting inside. So you have this dual action, the instant glucose flood paired with the adenosine block, which is then amplified by the natural guarana extract and metabolic B vitamins. That creates a dramatic visceral surge of alertness. Consumers aren't loyal to a safe, moderate, mathematical midpoint. They are loyal to the immediate physiological response that this specific synergistic formulation provides. That biological mechanism is what drives repeat purchases and retail velocity.
That's an interesting point, though I would frame it differently. Even if we completely accept the biological potency of that specific formulation, you cannot build a globally dominant supply chain on a purely visceral consumer experience. You build it on consistency, and the consistency of the 160 milligram standard across multiple product lines is the actual logistical engine of the brand.
You're referring to the broader portfolio now.
Exactly. Consider the product variation within their catalog. Whether you are looking at the original green can, the low-carb version, or the rehab line, which combines tea and lemonade in a slightly smaller 15.5 fluid ounce can, the 160 milligram baseline remains a constant thread. This is an absolute masterclass in portfolio management. For an international importer, this means you can offer diverse flavor profiles and nutritional approaches, like low-carbohydrate options or non-carbonated tea blends, without having to recalculate your regulatory risk or redefine the fundamental value proposition of the product to your retail partners.
So you're saying it simplifies the pitch to the retailer.
It simplifies the entire logistical chain. The predictability of that 160 milligram anchor across these core lines is exactly what allows for scalable export operations. You can mix pallets and containers for international shipping, knowing that the core functional metric, the one the customs agents actually care about, remains perfectly standardized.
I come at it from a different way. The consistency you're pointing to in the core line is notable, sure, but product variation is the actual growth engine of the brand in the modern FMCG landscape. The B2B buyers who are truly maximizing their margins aren't just shipping the original green can. They are capitalizing on the highly strategic divergence in caffeine profiles across the wider portfolio.
Divergence? But the core lines are standardized, like we just established.
The core lines, yes. But look at the Ultra series. Zero Ultra, the red, the blue. These are formulated at 150 milligrams per 16 ounces. It's a slight reduction, but it targets a more moderate stimulation profile, specifically designed for the sugar-conscious demographic, who might be sensitive to the full blend. Then, contrast that with the Java Monster line.
Ah, the coffee blends.
Right, those are 15 fluid-ounce cans packed with 200 milligrams of caffeine, specifically formulated with a coffee base to aggressively target the morning coffee replacement demographic. On the other end of the spectrum, you have the Hydro Energy water line, delivering 125 milligrams in a larger 20-ounce bottle for sustained hydration-focused energy during physical activity. And that's not even touching on the high-performance Rain series. This is a highly diverse, complex portfolio that requires incredible strategic sourcing. You aren't just selling one standardized sweet spot. You're selling a tailored physiological intervention for distinct consumer demographics. Managing this complexity is what allows a distributor to monopolize shelf space across convenience stores, supermarkets, and specialty retailers.
I'm not convinced by that line of reasoning because it drastically underestimates the sheer weight of regulatory intelligence required to actually manage those variations, which brings us right back to why knowing these exact milligram counts is essential for any serious distributor.
Essential in what way, practically speaking?
When you start dealing with shifting caffeine profiles, you enter an absolute minefield of global consumer safety standards and labeling laws. Take, for instance, the American Academy of Pediatrics. They strongly advise that teenagers limit their daily caffeine intake to 100 milligrams. When a single product exceeds that, or when an importer is bringing in formulations that shift wildly from 125 milligrams to 200 milligrams, depending on the SKU, they must have absolute precision in their data to navigate regional customs declarations and mandated health warnings.
Switched very heavily from Europe to Asia, of course.
Exactly. And this is where the theory of FMCG distribution meets the reality of wholesale integration. For a distributor managing a retail chain, the challenge isn't just knowing the caffeine content, it's finding a partner like Asia Grocery Wholesale, AGW, who can handle the bulk export logistics and offer the right wholesale pricing to keep shelves stocked. The precise mathematical knowledge of the product is the prerequisite for effectively utilizing a bulk export partner to maintain those critical supply lines.
That's a compelling argument, but have you considered that the very complexity I'm highlighting is exactly why such partnerships are necessary, though for entirely different reasons?
I'm listening.
I agree entirely on the necessity of a highly reliable supply line partner. In this industry, you are only as good as your supply line, but we have to look at the reality of the sourcing environment. Because of these complex, highly sought-after formulations, including the shifting product lines, the varied sugar contents, the specialized B vitamin blends, and those hidden guarana levels we talked about, distributors face a massive challenge in securing authentic products.
Authenticity is definitely a major hurdle right now, no question.
It's arguably the biggest hurdle. The global market is absolutely flooded with parallel imports, gray market goods, and varied regional formulations that don't match the required specs for a specific buyer. Therefore, distributors specifically need an expert partner like Asia Grocery Company to guarantee authentic sourcing. It is the intricate chemistry and the incredibly high consumer demand for that specific monster blend that creates supply chain bottlenecks in the first place.
Partnering with a specialized wholesale exporter isn't just about managing the logistics of a simple 160 milligram standardized can.
It's about protecting the integrity of the product.
Exactly. It is about securing a stable pipeline of a highly complex, high-turnover FMCG brands. That is how international buyers maintain healthy margins. They need to ensure they are delivering the genuine biological synergy that their retail consumers actually demand without falling victim to supply shortages or unverified stock.
As we draw this discussion to a close, I think it's incredibly valuable to summarize the core insights regarding the science of energy that makes this brand such a formidable global powerhouse. My position remains that the strategic brilliance of the product really lies in its calibrated 160 milligram caffeine serving size. By creating a metric that perfectly balances functional efficacy with regulatory safety, sitting neatly at 40% of the FDA's daily limit, the brand has engineered a predictable, highly scalable SKU. This standardization is the critical anchor that allows international FMCG importers to confidently navigate the daily complexities of global trade, customs compliance, and portfolio management.
And while the numbers on the label certainly matter for compliance and logistics, my perspective is that the true powerhouse of the brand is its complex, synergistic ingredient blend. The specific, engineered combination of taurine, L-carnitine, ginseng, B vitamins, guarana extract, and that rapid-acting glucose creates a biological mechanism that standard coffee or simple sodas simply cannot replicate. Furthermore, the strategic variation across the Ultra, Java, and Hydro lines demonstrates that catering to specific physiological needs and distinct consumer demographics is the real driver of market dominance and retail velocity.
Even though we're looking at this from totally different angles, focusing on the math versus the chemistry, I think there is a clear point of convergence here. We both fully acknowledge the massive structural shift toward functional beverages in the global market right now. Energy drinks have entirely transitioned from a niche category aimed at extreme sports athletes to an absolute must-have anchor for B2B traders, particularly in the Asia-Pacific region.
Exactly. The demand for highly engineered functional performance is not a passing trend. It is a permanent evolution in consumer behavior. People expect their beverages to do something for them now. And capitalizing on that evolution requires a lot more than just capital. It requires highly sophisticated market intelligence.
Which brings us to our final takeaway for the FMCG professionals analyzing this space today. Success in the global functional beverage market requires a dual approach. First, a deep, sophisticated understanding of the underlying product science, whether you focus on the regulatory math like I do or the biological synergy like you do. And second, a robust, reliable supply partner like AGW to actually execute the trade. Navigating the logistical, regulatory, and pricing complexities of international distribution is a profound challenge that you really shouldn't tackle alone.
It absolutely is. Understanding the product is really only the first step. Securing an authentic, consistent supply at margins that actually make sense for your retail footprint is the ultimate test of an international distributor. There is certainly much more to explore within this material regarding specific regional market dynamics and how these blends perform in different territories.
Indeed, there is. The landscape is constantly shifting, and staying ahead of it is half the battle. We will leave it to you, the listener, to evaluate your own procurement strategies and distribution frameworks based on the analysis shared today. Thank you for joining us for this intellectual exchange.